I'm going to share with you my top 5 skills for you to have happy relationships. If you follow me long enough, you recognize you've already known that happiness is something we create for ourselves. So you're saying, Rowan, happy relationships is something you create for yourself, right? Well, so let's change the happy relationship aspect to a relationship conducive to happiness. We call it great relationships. A relationship conducive to your becoming happy, and each individual constituent in the relationship entity, whether it's a couple or more, happy and harmonious in the relationship. You've seen blogs before, you've seen lists before of ways and means and skills for you to have happy relationships. So what I'm going to share with you is something you haven't considered before. They're completely new. And in fact, you won't find them anywhere on the interwebs. And even if you've heard them before, you haven't considered the things that I'm going to share with you. So let's go over right now. I'm going to begin from the number 1 all the way down to the least. So the best to least in that order. Number 1, something you've never heard before, is objectivity and morality. Have you heard that before? Why is objectivity and morality number 1? First of all, what is it? Objectivity is your ability to reason using logic, not emotion. Reasoning with emotion is reasoning by whim and is no way to reason at all. When you reason by whim, you're inconsistent. When you reason by emotion, your emotion's all over the place. It's determined by your psychology. And so you don't have a concrete thing to hold on to. So in order for you to reason, in fact, in any debate or argument or conversation, when you are reasoning, you're reasoning from logic because you cannot reason from emotion. And so, do you base your relationship entity, your relationship on logical foundations, on logical things that you can be consistent, that you can hold on to, that you can grasp onto? What is morality? Morality is what is the good and what is the bad. Good or bad. Morality, in essence, what I'm saying is that do you know what you will accept and what you will not tolerate? Are you a non-judgmentally accepting person? When you become an accepting person, when you become like me who is completely accepting, you become non-tolerating. I'm the most intolerant person in the world. There are a lot of things that I accept, but the things that I don't tolerate, I will not accept, and therefore I will not tolerate. And because you know the delineation, you know where the line is, you know how to be with me. And when you know how to be with me, you're completely comfortable with me because you know where I stand. If you don't have a moral code, an ethical code, and objectivity, meaning your ability to reason reasonably, when you are reasoning from emotion is unreasonable. When you're able to reason reasonably and have a moral code that you can live by, you're not like a jellyfish, spineless jellyfish that blows in the wind. You can hold on to certain logical things that you know you can partake in the relationship, and you know that I'll play. And you know the areas in the relationship where I won't play. So this also, your ability to be objective and know what's the good and what's the bad, what's the boundary in the relationship, makes it possible for you to conduct the second and third aspect of this. All of the aspects, it's the umbrella for all of the aspects of the top 5 list. So what's the next one? The next one is your ability to negotiate. Have you heard that before? Now, if you believe, you've heard me say before that all communication is negotiation. If you don't believe that all of communication is negotiation, you're already way, way, way behind the curve. Because at the very least, remember this always, you're negotiating for their attention. If you are not negotiating for the attention of your partner or anybody in the world, you are engaging in something referred to as the death of every loving relationship. You've heard me say this before. What is the death of every loving relationship? The death of every loving relationship is being, and therefore feeling, taken for granted. When you take the attention of the other person and they take your attention as already granted to them, and you no longer have to negotiate for that attention, then you are and will feel taken for granted and will be the death of every loving relationship. Let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question. How do you know your relationship is going to shit? How you know your relationship is going to shit is when you no longer have to ask for the attention of the other person. You presume it's already given to you. You presume the attention is already given to you, therefore they will feel taken as already granted, and they will feel taken for granted. Ask yourself that question. Is your attention being taken as already granted? You will feel taken for granted, and it will be the death of your relationship. What's the next one? The next one is something they always tell you, the number one thing in the relationship is communicate, except they don't tell you how to communicate and what to communicate about, because you can communicate about absolutely anything, off-putting and annoying. So what do you communicate about and how do you communicate? That's an entire thing in itself, but I had to put in this list. The next thing is sex skills. Now I don't mean for you to be a sex god or sex goddess or tantra master. I only mean for you to recognize that to be good in bed, it requires of you to recognize that no one can fake a fetish. In other words, people are into their own things, and when those things align with you and that person, you can happily engage in it. And what I encourage you to do is those things that you don't align with, the things that they're into which you're not into, you encourage them to pursue those things with other people. Do you understand? That probably won't make any sense to you, but I'll explain that in other videos. The last thing is love. Did you know love was a skill? Love is your, remember, ability to recognize that love is, in as much as how much love you want for yourself, you want that for your beloved. As much love as you want for yourself, as much happiness, let me rephrase that. The same happiness that you want for yourself, you want that for your beloved. In other words, jealousy has nothing to do with love, and ownership has nothing to do with love, and everything to do with other agendas and other arrangements. The idea ownership didn't even exist before 10,000 years ago at the advent of agriculture and farming and ranching. Because only during that time, when we stopped being nomads and going to a place where the food where we came up with the notion of ownership, because we owned land, we tilled land, we nurtured land, and then we had to pass it on to our children. Therefore, we had to come up with the idea called ownership. Before that, we were a forced egalitarian society which shared everything and went where the food was. So we didn't own anything. We had territory, but not ownership. So those ideas doesn't exist when it comes to love. Love is your sincere wanting for your beloved's happiness, intrinsic to your own happiness. So those are the top 5 skills for you to have happy relationships. Not that happiness is something extrinsic. Happiness is something you create for yourself. Happiness in a relationship is, in other words, how can you facilitate a relationship conducive to happiness for each individual in the relationship? Great relationships. Number 1, objectivity and morality. Do you know where you stand? Do you know what's right or wrong? Do you know what you will tolerate, what you won't tolerate, and what you will accept in a relationship? Negotiation skills. Can you negotiate? And by the way, all of these skills we teach in a 12+ hour course, Great Relationships University. Check it out, www.greatrelationshipsu.com. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.